conference room on the 3rd floor here at City Hall in Danbury. Present is myself, Jack Knapp, Councilman Chairman. We also have on this committee Councilman Curran, Councilman Seabury, Councilman Visconti, all currently present, with Councilman Hallis, who's on this committee, not here as of yet. We have ex officio members in attendance of Councilwoman Teitschultz, Councilman Rotella, Councilman Cavo, Councilman Nero, Councilwoman Deep, and Councilwoman Stanley. And, and Councilman Trombetta. Thank you. We have it as they call to the meeting here, the Director of Finance, David St. Clair, Director of Public Works, Antonio Adirola, the Sewer Water Department, David Day, from the Mayor's Office, Wayne Shepard, from Carlisle Authority, Sandy Moy, and from the Danbury Museum, Levi Nisa. Did I miss anybody else in the required here? For those of you on the committee here, you should have passed on our agenda of the evening. We're going to begin with the Recreation Department. It's on page 194 for those of you who are holding. Also for the record, Councilman Perkins just arrived. That's official. Okay, and I'll put the ball in your court, David.
Thank you. All right, starting on page 194. If it pleases the Chairman, I'm going to start with the bottom line totals because so many of these budgets, there's very few changes from the prior year, and I'm going to highlight the major changes with the budget and kind of work my way back from that. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions to that. The adopted budget last year was $460,000. The proposed budget this year is $428,000 for the Department of Recreation. Major changes in this department are related to the grant, the amount of money that we provide for grants such as YMCA and Westerners, and we $25,000 reduction in our contribution to YMCA. This is, as many of you know, we've been making contributions to YMCA over the last few years, and this is a scheduled reduction. So the bulk of the $32,000 reduction is related to the reduction of the contribution to the YMCA. They have absorbed contractual salary increases of about $1,300, and they've reduced their overtime by $3,000 and also their part-time by $3,600.
Okay, and for the record, I did meet with Mr. Contanis this afternoon, who we basically reviewed the numbers, and he was pretty much in agreement with where we're at. He did have some concern regarding, he did ask for the $3,000 overtime salaries. That's based on numbers that he anticipated he might run into with the lifeguards and other employees in case during the course of the summer, but obviously he's willing to work with it. So that was his only major concern. Anything else on that one? Any other questions pertaining to that? If none, we'll move on to the next, which is the Terry Royal Park Authority. Present with us is Sandy Moy.
Okay. In the last year's adopted budget, there was we had in the budget $283,500. In the proposed budget, it's being reduced down to $255,150. A 10% reduction of $28,350. Plus the board reductions for many of the authorities and the grant agencies.
Any comments?
I guess I would be remiss if I said thank you for cutting my budget. But I guess we got cut a lot, 10% last year. It's a total of about almost $60,000 in the last 2 years. We have over 722 acres of land to maintain, 17 buildings that we're responsible for, and it all comes out of the money, between the money that we get from the city to run the park and also revenue from the mansion and several outbuildings that we rent for residences. So taking that kind of cut is a huge cut for us. Last year, we muddled through. We made it. This year it's going to be a substantial problem for us. We may need to wind up cutting personnel. When you look at the personnel that run the park, we only have 4 full-time employees. It's myself, our secretary, who is also our event coordinator that coordinates all the events for the park and the mansion, and then 2 caretakers who are the people who actually take care of the property and the building. So in looking at this, it could cost us 1 employee, which would put us down to only 1 caretaker, which is, for safety reasons, is a big problem for us as far as sending somebody out to do something on a ladder or some other type of work and not being able to have another person working. We use you were speaking of cutting overtime. We've cut our overtime down to almost 0 through a lot of hard work on our alarm systems and that kind of thing for call-ins or that type. We've also we do an extensive use of volunteers in the park to get a lot of the work done in the park, but don't make up for the dollars that we need to pay for electricity and heat and insurance and all the other things that that we cover and that we pay for out of our budget. We have our your typical line items that everybody else has, and obviously prices are going up. We've worked very hard with our vendors to keep prices down. I think there's probably maybe only 1 that actually went up in cost, and everybody else held their prices for us. So we've been very fortunate to do that. But looking at the numbers that we're being cut again this year, this is going to be a real turning point for us, whether we wind up closing a building or reducing services or something, or laying off an employee. Time will tell, so as to what the board decides. I would hope you won't continue to do this. I hope the economy gets better, because I don't think you'll have a terrible park if you do much more. So as far as that goes, so anyway.
Comments? Anybody from the board? Mr. Patel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Sandy. First of all, it's good to see you, and you're doing a great job very well on the way. Doing the Danbury. Can you give us just an estimate of what you think the revenues are on an annual basis?
Sure. There's about $148,000 that comes in through mansion rentals, about $60,000 to $65,000, and in the outbuildings, we have 4 outbuildings that we rent. 3 are residences. 1 is a small Montessori school or a small preschool, and that takes up the other part of the 147.
So that's about 150 for everything?
Yep.
Okay. Are commissions that you have to pay to get those funds, or are they all your funds?
No, that's all ours. Right.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Any further questions? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. White, thank you. Thanks for your hard work.
Okay, the Cultural Commission. It's on page 198. Cultural Commission had an adopted budget last year of $94,500. They requested a flat amount. However, they again, similar to Terry Wall Park Authority, had a 10% reduction down to $85,050 in the proposed budget. A reduction of $9,450. Any questions?
Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Okay. Lake Kenosha Commission. The adopted budget, I should say in the current year, is $19,800. And they they requested a flat amount. However, the proposed budget puts in for a 10% reduction of $1,980, or for $17,820. That's what the budget is this year being proposed.
Comments? Next,
Ice Center. $17,000 is the adopted budget for this year. Again, 10% reduction is being proposed, down to $64,800.
Comments? Mr. Rotella?
Anybody here from Lives?
No. Okay. Next, Danbury Museum. We do have with us Mr. Newsom from the Danbury Museum. Newsom, correct?
Newsom, that's got it. As long as you don't confuse me with Bridget.
Okay.
I don't think I'd worry about that much.
In the current year budget, is $85,500, and what was the Museum Authority requested the flat amount. However, we proposed a 10% reduction on top in that amount for $76,950, which is a reduction of $8,550.
And for those of you that did get the printout, there is a typo there or something. No question. Okay. Mr. Newsom, any comments for us?
I'll say the same thing I say to this group as I say to my wife every month when she hands me my allowance. Thank you very much. Thank you. May I just say, though, Bridget Girton is, of course, our executive director. She's home with a new baby, and I had to convince her very strongly not to attend tonight because she would have had to get in this and that, and so I want to extend my thank you for her also, because she did want to be here, but I didn't think it would be necessary. You probably could, but no comment. No fun.
Okay. Very good. Now, David, the next one is the employee service benefit.
Yep, and I'll explain that in just a second. And I know, these 10% cuts were not easy cuts that the mayor proposed. He knows it's been difficult for these commissions and these authorities and these grant agencies. And it was not the first place that was looked at. However, as everybody here knows and the public knows, these are very difficult times. And the funding for these agencies have, as you look at the history on these, have gone up over the past many years. And so we're trying to scale it back a little bit. We hope that they've been able to stand on their own as much as possible, and also to look to other means to get some revenue through donations or other in-kind. And so although these cuts are difficult to them, this is a time that everybody is sharing the pain. Unfortunately, it's unavoidable. So, the employee service benefit line, and this is again throughout all the divisions that you'll see. The unfunded positions in the budget are 46.5 positions. There are a couple positions that have been eliminated. However, the other positions, most of them are still in the budget, and for the most part are unfunded. We can't unfund every position because we still need to have funding available for police, for fire. For some, we're not going to be able to. We know we're not going to completely staff all the and police or fire, even in the best of times. It's just not possible. Not because of funding, because we're unable to find suitable candidates, and because of the natural transition of people. And also we have some funding in there for highway and for some building. Really, the positions that we focused on trying to put some funding in there are the ones that provide a financial risk to the city and most importantly, a public safety risk. The financial risks I refer to is if overtime starts to creep upwards, and we do an analysis on that, we know we need to fill that position. Right. So the employee service benefit line is really an offset putting money back in to offset that personnel salary savings line. So if you notice in the budget, there's a personnel salary savings line which reduces the salary line, the regular salary line. And the reason why I put that in there, in addition to this employee service benefit line, is to offer more budgetary control, because this is going to be such a tight year. We can't continue to do things the way we have in the past. In the past, we offered some flexibility to the departments to utilize whatever funds they might have had available in the regular salary account to maybe offset some of their other lines if they needed to do so. We're not going to have that luxury anymore, at least not in the foreseeable future. So if a position is funded for the entire year and maybe that position is vacant for half the year, well, we're going to need to use those funds for something else. And that's just the way it is. You know, we're trying to be as prudent with the funds as much as possible. That's why you didn't see Antonio come back this year to ask for the money that he needed, typically needs, for salt and sand and overtime. All right, because we're utilizing those funds for the vacant positions that he has. And we're going to continue to use those kind of strategies throughout. Okay? But anyways, that's kind of the global explanation for employee service benefit and personnel salary savings lines, and all the other and how they relate to those not completely funded positions. For the most part, they're probably about 40% funded, and they're earmarked for positions that need to be filled for public safety, and that includes public works reasons or for financial reasons. Okay.
Any questions of Mr. Sanguine?
Thank you. Through you. Is it possible to give a very simple illustration? I know there was one there, but I was trying to pick it up, and sorry, David, it got by me. But
that's right.
So I'm trying to figure out. I mean, if the three of us were employed in a department, and I was taken out of it or something, that position.
No. All right.
Kind of on a track or no?
Let's look at it this way. Let's say we have. We'll look at highway, if I may. All right. Let's say we have 2 open positions in highway, and then we know we're not going to fill them July 1st. It's just there's not enough time to go out and find the people right away to staff it right away on July 1st. So, and let's just assume they get paid, and I'll just use round numbers, $50,000 a piece. So there's $100,000 that you would have in your salary line, right? And it's highly unlikely that if you needed those 2 positions, let's assume you do. You need them, absolutely need them. Then you may find that you're going to fill those positions for probably you're not going to hire someone on July 1st, but maybe you'll hire someone on September, and maybe you'll hire somebody else later in the year. But on average, probably 50% of the year, or 50% of the $100,000 of salary may be needed. All right, and that's kind of how you look at it. How much of the total salary would be needed? Because you don't need $100,000 worth of salary in there.
Right.
So you create an offset to that. All right. Now, that's one way of looking at it. A more practical way of looking at it is a lot of these other positions, like in general government support, where in my department I have an open position. It won't be filled. In several other departments, in general government support, which are not crucial, they're not public safety positions. However, there is one position that is in public buildings. They have a couple positions open, in fact. So we have 4.5 positions that are vacant in general government support. We know we can't defund all those positions. You can defund mine, and you can defund the tax collectors. We can defund a couple others. But we need to keep some money there for buildings, because that's going to drive overtime. You know, if we notice that some of our buildings people are coming in and we're running into overtime, we don't want to pay them time and a half and double time. We have to kind of do a cost-benefit analysis and say, now it's time we hire somebody. Right? So that's why we kind of have to keep that money there. And you know, sometimes that money will have to be moved over, maybe to fund overtime until a decision is made. So you can't completely defund it. You have to fund it somewhat until that's made. But that's why you'll see more funds in the public works area and in the public safety area for that purpose. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. If everybody could flip to page 121. Let's get right here. And that'll bring us to public buildings.
Okay.
What's the limit?
Okay. I'm going to look at these buildings in general, and then I'll kind of back it up a little bit and then turn it over to Antonio. And I'll really take a kind of a high view. Overall, and these fall in the general government support area. And general government support is going up, when you look at adopted, to proposed by $265,000 on a $9.4 million budget. Now, there's been a lot of nips and tucks, and a lot of departments have absorbed things that they needed, so they cut where they had to in order to afford the things that much of that $265,000 is on required things that we absolutely could not do without. Things that are driving that are things like are impacting us from external sources. From Connecticut DEP, that you saw at the end in the capital area for underground storage tanks. All right. But we separately listed that. But there's some smaller things for the, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. That is for the OSHA studies that are required at the Senior Center building, the old library building, and at the hazmat study and a plan required at the library building. These collectively add up to $35,000. Our heating costs and our utility costs associated with the new police station. If you recall, last year, at this time, we weren't in the new police station. So we put in our best guess estimate, and now that we're in it, we're fully utilizing it, we know that from budget to budget, we're going to be a couple $100,000 higher. All right, when you look at heating, utilities, all the building-related things, cleaning, so much of that $265,000 for total general government support is related to the fact that we have a new building that's 3 times the size. And also things like $35,000 for, as I mentioned, the OSHA study. There's some nips and tucks here, and that's, you know, if you want to get into details, I'm going to turn it over to Antonio, but that's the real high-level impact to what's going on in buildings. Buildings is the thing that had the thing that stands out the most in general government support.
Before Antonio begins it, Phil, you have a question?
To the chair, probably you, Antonio. Why are we still heating the old police station? Didn't we abandon it?
We did, but you know, I can answer it better. But Antonio, I'm going to turn it over to you. I mean,
we are really just ventilating the air in there, so we don't end up having a stagnant building where we're growing mold and other issues. And it's set at absolute minimum heat. I think it was 52 degrees, and we monitor that consistently. But we are moving air in there to prevent mold growth and other issues.
You have certain basic costs in there that, you know, you've got to have security, you've got to have lights, you've got to have certain basic costs to, you know, let's face it, we might sell that building, we don't know what we're going to do with it, but we still have to protect the building. It's still liability. It's still liability.
Okay. Antonio, do we want to go through these building by building?
Mr. Chairman, it is your pleasure.
I mean, we've got the overview.
Yeah, really the overview, as David mentioned, is the OSHA studies were direct issue related to a surprise OSHA visit that we had in the city about a year ago. They found multiple issues, resolved most of them. These studies were required for some of the buildings that they entered, so we put them in this year's budget. If we did not absorb some of the other utility costs, you would probably see an increase of over $1 million in this general government line item. So the $35,000, in addition to the balance of the utility costs, which we cannot absorb, is really what makes up the increase.
Okay. Committee members, if you don't have any issue with it, we'll just go and move on. I mean, we've got the overview of basically them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those 8 categories. Unless anybody has any issue with it, I'm going to just move on into the public works portion of it. Okay. Anybody else with any questions regarding the particular buildings? Okay, here we go. We'll move on to Public Works, which is on page 148.
Now, Chairman, if I may, I'm going to take, again, a very high level of Public Works, and then I'll turn it over to Director of Public Works. The budget for Public Works last year was 9.1. This year it's just a little over 9.2 for an increase of about 150,000 from an adopted to proposed budget. They've absorbed all the contractual increases, which amounted to $100,000, a little over $100,000. And they have, I'm sorry, I didn't have my number count there, but about 6 vacant positions. And they, and when you take into consideration all the other lines that they have saved money on or reduced their budget from year to year through efficiencies and through other means, they were able to absorb any increase of on their salary lines. Where they got pinched was something really beyond their control. Again, and this is something I've stated it in a couple other meetings, and it's worth repeating here because it impacts these guys more than anybody. And that's in the motor fuel. If you recall last year, we were very thrilled about the contractual rate that we got. Well, that wasn't going to last forever. It was a 1-year rate. It was in the 170s. Our contractual rate for this coming year is in the 230s. Everybody knows that the price is going up, and we're unfortunately no different. We got a much better price than everybody else, but we still had to pay the piper. It's going up about 55 cents. Heating fuel, same way. We're paying in about $2.09. We're going to be in the $2.30s. Diesel fuel, same thing. Most of those costs are borne by Public Works. Now, they've had to absorb a lot of other increases in order to keep their total increase on a $9.1 million budget only about $150,000. So their overall budget is going to be about $9.2 million. And they have well, again, they get hit. It's minor, but these are state inspection fees and all these other kind of things. They're constantly being bombarded by outside regulators and OSHA, DEP, you name it, which are not necessarily. We do have some planned amount in there, but the regulations just keep growing and growing. And as you saw this year, just this past year, they hit us with over $125,000. That's you see right here. That doesn't even count for the stuff that we've absorbed in the current year budget, which Antonio doesn't even talk about, because he's had to suck that up in his budget. But that's really his impact on his budget is related to fuel primarily. All right, I'm going to, on all his lines, that's what it boils all down to. But I'll turn it over to the Director of Finance.
Okay. Mr. Iderall, we're on page 148.
Okay.
And you go from there.
Let's see. What can we do here to... I will provide as much detail as this committee would like. If there's some specific programs that you would like to talk about, instead of me going through each page, there's probably going to be probably going to be about 50, 60 pages of budgets here. We can do that also. I do want to mention that some of the efficiencies that David is speaking about that we were able to implement has been directly related to some new equipment that the Common Council has allowed me to purchase with the assistance of David. We've gone out and actually looked and purchased some used equipment. It's allowed us to do a lot more in-house work. I would say that we've reduced our out-servicing of most of our maintenance work probably by 60 or 70%. So all that work's being done in-house at a substantial savings to the city. Our construction division, which basically handles small to medium-sized projects by doing in-house management of those projects, again has brought some substantial savings to the city. We're able to take money that we were given to consultants, engineers, private contractors, and we're using that to actually put more brick and mortar in our buildings, to put more drainage pipe in our roads, and to do more paving. And we have better control. So it has worked out really well. If you remember, this is kind of a vision that the mayor and I had spoken to the mayor about doing, and he worked with me on putting together a reorganization, and we're starting to see the benefit of that. Unfortunately, the economy has hit us hard now, and we just have to kind of do things even better. Our snow plowing operation, with some of the loss of personnel, we have specifically pulled in what's called a 90-day driver. It's about a 90-day driver. We've gotten the union to agree to use a 90-day driver in the wintertime to actually staff our snow plowing needs. So we're not bringing in a full-time person or keeping a full-time person year-round so we can put him in a truck. Most public works departments are sized based on snow plowing operation. The benefits that you get off-season are just benefits that you get from having the personnel available to you during the winter months. So that's really kind of how you size up a public works department. So by us being able to pull in these part-time seasonal drivers, we've been able to keep our staff where it is right now and been able to work with those vacancies. That did not happen with our building department. Our building department, as David was mentioning to you, what we saw there was a complete different trend. Our overtime went through the roof. By the time we actually saw what the trend was doing, and by the time we were actually able to do the test to bring in a licensed electrician, plumbers, HVAC people, the overtime had gotten, it got pretty substantial. And it wasn't like we were making a decision to use the overtime. We had to bring the people in. You had boilers that went down. We had broken pipes. We had all kinds of issues. So you had to bring people in. And we've now staffed 2 additional people in our building maintenance department. We do have 2 vacancies, and some of the monies that David was talking about is, again, monies that we're looking to see what happens as we trend out. If we can tweak our operation and make it work with the 2 less staff members, then that money will not be used. But if there's a fluctuation and the overtime does go up, we have that money to kind of cover the expense of that additional overtime. So it worked in some departments. It didn't work in some other departments. But that's kind of a very broad overview of Public Works. Overview-wise, I think the department is running really well. I do meet with about 11 other Public Works officials every other month. We're all facing the same issues. We're all looking at different ways to do our jobs a little more economically. The goal is to keep our staff employed, to bring as much in-house as we can, because believe it or not, we can perform the work in-house more cost-effectively if you have the proper management, you have the proper training, and you have the proper accountability. And Public Works in Danbury is a textbook case of that. And it's what other departments are doing. New Milford just bought a paving box last year. They're bringing most of their paving in-house. So these are the types of things that we as Public Works officials are trying to trend in, because 10, 15 years ago, the trend was the opposite direction. It was farm everything out, but things are a little different today, so that's kind of where we stand. So I don't know if that's a good gateway into what this committee would like to do.
Yeah, what we've got is our list of a dozen lines here that we have. Director of Public Works, Highway, State Aid, Highway Projects, they're all flatline. Snow and ice removal. The numbers, budget as amended was $1 million, and yet the mayor's budget is $775,000.
Right. Right.
How are we accounting for that $225,000 difference?
Well, David can, these are average trends. So based on trending, we as a department would like to trend upward, but, David has assured us that if
global warming's here, but,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's at 25%.
Not only that, but what we have been seeing is some of the trucking costs that were originally hitting us about a year and a half ago with the diesel costs have now leveled off a little bit. So we're hoping to get our material at the same price as last year, if not, maybe a little less.
If I can talk to that. And keep in mind, our contingency is, we kind of pull from that if we need it. In 2006, June 2007, or 2008, let me say June 2008, we ended the year on that line in 2003 at $685,000. We had a blip in 2009 about $1 million. Prior to that, we were about in 2007 we were about $325,000. So if you look at our trends, we're probably all right. We had a blip in that 1 year, so we're probably okay. For a normal winter. If we have a bad winter, we know we're going to have Antonio come to me, and we're going to say, let's see if we can absorb it. If we can't, we'll have to come to the council and say, perhaps we have to go to contingency on this. But that's what contingency is for. Those, out of the ordinary things. Because we don't want to build that, higher unusual situation into the baseline of the budget. Not there, anyways. That's why you put it in contingency.
The monies will cover the average to mild winter, which is what we're, that's basically how we're building our budget. It's nothing different for us. We also have a little computer program like David does, and what it does is it kind of not only do the average, but it trends pricing into it a little bit. We really don't know where pricing is. The economics of trucking the material has really given us we're basically at the mercy of the fuel prices when it comes to trucking.
And then of the other items, we have street lighting, park maintenance, forestry, public building maintenance, repair. Those are all flatlined.
Yep.
Equipment maintenance seems to be up.
Equipment maintenance is directly related. That's where we fund our fuel, our diesel fuel and our gasoline. Okay. And by the way, Public Works carries the entire nut for the entire city. That's fire, police, buildings, all the general government. When there's an increase in pricing for gasoline and diesel, we basically carry the burden for the balance of the department. So that's what you're seeing is over $100,000 hit just in that one line item.
Right.
Okay.
And this is the one line item I gave him more than what you requested.
That's why I was wondering. Because I know you're not that generous.
And there isn't many.
I'm not that generous. I wouldn't have given it to him if he didn't need it.
And then just the other ones that do flatline are recycling, engineering, and construction.
Exactly. Those are very basic.
Great.
Okay. First, San Antonio, you guys do a hell of a job. All winter long, I hear nothing but praise on how to clean the streets. But I've been recently getting concerned calls from constituents who live on private roads. I know the mayor said something to me maybe about a year ago that we have to sit down and do something for these people. The roads are just falling apart. And what do I tell them?
Well, private road maintenance, as you know, private roads, there's roads that we actually don't maintain at all. There's roads that we just provide sanding, and then there's roads that we do sanding and plowing. Mm-hmm. These are all delineated. There's no changing of them. These are just basically grandfathered activities that we've been doing for years and years and years. What you're talking about is some roads that are actually falling apart.
Right.
And that's a policy decision. That's a much more detailed, it's a much more detailed discussion because private roads just weren't invented yesterday. These communities have been private since probably the time they've been formed. And
sure.
Whether or not we do assessment projects, which is something that we have looked into, we've actually floated a couple assessment projects for some roads, and they were denied. We spent one road, we spent over $200,000 in engineering and investigative costs, only to have the residents deny it. So it's a very complicated issue, and it's a policy issue.
Yeah, I understand that. Has there been any communication between you and the mayor regarding
There is. We actually are talking about, and I should have him discuss this, but we're kind of talking about providing some alternative benefit to these communities when we do assessment projects. If we set them up as like a tax deferred or a taxing district, some of the money that they pay, they can actually get tax benefits from, which would help them substantially after these assessment projects are enacted. So that's kind of what we were talking about doing, and none of our budgets are built to just start going in and maintaining these roads. I mean, you couldn't. The budget would be drastically different than what you would see today. These are roads that these communities have let go for years and years and years and years, and they're at the point now where you're looking at total road rebuilding. There's drainage that just needs complete rehabilitation. Some communities have no drainage at all. They're just leak-offs into people's private yards. So it is a real undertaking. And it's something that would require a lot of studying to really determine maybe the different magnitude of approach.
So if I get a call tomorrow and they're saying, what's the city going to, what's their thought process on all this? I can say, well, they're starting to discuss it. I know that's just kind of pushing the buck a little bit, but
yeah.
There is communication between Public Works and...
I don't know how to say this. I'm going to try to say it in a different way, but...
Where are you going to find the money? I mean, you got to have a means to pay for it.
Well, not only only that,
I'll be the bad guy in this.
but these are private communities. You
There's a
purchase in a
discussion,
private community.
I'll be,
They don't want the public in there either.
you have to have a frank discussion about your budget cannot afford it. And I'm just going to direct it to you, Antonio, not to, your budget can't afford it. And there's nowhere in this budget that can afford that thing, so it has to go beyond the budget.
That's correct.
And I'm not a roads person, but I know enough about roads that those things ain't cheap.
And not only that, but they're not anywhere near to the widths that we're accustomed to working on a road, so you're bringing in, sometimes you may have to bring in some special equipment to actually work on them. These are very complicated issues, but when you purchase a home, you purchase in a private community, they'll tell you right up front, in the association budget, there should be some maintenance money allocated for the maintenance of the roads. I know mine, I live in a private community, I pay $4,000 of additional taxes for maintaining our roads and snow plowing. So, it all depends how each association builds their budget, but it's like subsidizing another not-for-profit organization. That's really what it comes down to. So I don't know if I kind of answered.
It's like any of these things. If you plan long enough ahead, because and that's what it comes. You gotta. This is something you lay the breadcrumbs now. Hoping to eventually at some point you can start building upon it, but. It's not something that can happen overnight. This is, something that you got to plan way in advance. Have a 5-year plan to begin something, but you got to start now if you're going to do that. You can't. It's such a big investment, and
let's move on from that.
Yeah, I do want to mention there has been a lot of discussion. This is one of probably the top 5 issues that Public Works and the mayor have had joint conversations about. We're trying to find better ways, maybe provide some technical service for them. Also, we looked at having some of our low bid vendors maybe go in and actually provide them some better pricing to help stretch their dollars. There's a lot that we talked about doing, and some communities have actually come to us and have talked to us about what can you guys help us with? Can you provide some free engineering? And we've done some of that. But to physically go in and take responsibility for rehabilitating these roads and improving them, you could not imagine what it will cost the balance of the tax base to really do that. It's substantial.
Thank you. Enough said. Phil, you had a question?
Just probably to the chair, to Antonio. How do we determine what it costs for streetlights? And what do they do? Go to bid every year, or how is that determined? They got a meter on every streetlight?
No, it's a special rate that CLMP has. It's an unmetered rate, and it's based on the number of streetlights that you operate within the city's limits, and that rate will fluctuate depending on how much capital money they actually put into the streetlights that are within your municipality. So it's a special rate, unmetered rate.
Freddie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Ianzarola. You have 6 vacancies now?
Overall, across the board, yeah.
Different departments?
Yes.
Is anything going to try and be done with that or down the road, or so we can get those people, those positions filled?
Well, certain positions will need to be filled because it's driving some overtime, out of a comfort zone. And we've had discussions about that. Other positions, we know that Antonio, he can probably comfortably do without for a period of time. But that's why we put some money in there, to kind of, if he needs to fill a position right now because he has a critical need, he's got some money to do that. He doesn't have all the money for 6 positions. Nobody does in this budget. It's not designed that way. However, it is designed to try to take care of our critical needs.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbull, do you have a question?
So, quick question. If we had been hit like Lower Fairfield County in March with that terrible storm, and where does obviously things have to be done. Would that go into the contingency budget if we had to, do the repairs, the trees? I mean, so many trees are down in, west and east and all that, and basically shut some cities down for 3 or 4 days. Do we handle that? How does that work?
Well, what would happen is there would be a direct impact to our operating line items, which would deplete all the overtime, and then it would cause us, in order to finish up the year, to actually come in for additional appropriation and possibly using a contingency.
Through the council?
Through the council, that is correct.
And is there a point where you're allowed to go to the state and it becomes a...
There is. If there's a declaration of, and it has to be statewide, of a disaster area, there would be some money that would be freed up to actually compensate. And that's happened a couple times with some major snowstorms. When that happens, we have a very strict requirement to track all of the monies, the equipment, fuel, everything, chainsaw use that goes into cleaning up those type of scenarios. So as soon as we hear that there's a possibility that's going to happen, our foremen basically become bookkeepers. And the better your books are, the more money you get.
We dodged a bullet in that.
We really did, I tell you guys. We dodged a bullet with this past snowstorm. It was in Brewster. It was 1.5 miles away. Joe's Hill had 3 times the amount of snow as the rest of our city. So, these things are just, they're at a, razor's edge. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rittal.
Thank you. Through the chair to Antonio. David mentioned that, fuel costs are going up across the board, and we're still... You guys need to be congratulated on the price that you got. Obviously we recognize it's higher than last year, but it's still a hell of a lot lower than the retail figure. So that's really good. So congrats on that. It looks like it's 20 or 30% below retail. Tell me a little bit about dual fuel. Do we have any dual fuel burners, natural gas, and are we planning on putting more online?
We do. Almost all of our facilities have dual fuel, except for some of our older facilities. Our standard operating procedure is when we do a new boiler fit out, if gas is available, you get a dual fuel automatic, conversion system where we can literally sit at a computer and change it from gas to oil. Because of the great price that we had on oil, we basically ran all of our facilities last year on oil at a substantial savings. Gas was much higher. So that's what ends up happening. We make that decision, we have meetings, we make that decision early enough in the season where we can predict. If we're going to be running strictly on gas, we're going to make sure our gas systems, make sure all that stuff is up and operational. But the focus would then be more predominantly on the gas system. But all of our boilers are dual fuel, and that is strictly set up so we can take advantage of the cheapest possible fuel that we can get our hands on.
If I may, we were talking about private roads. Let's just briefly talk about public roads. How are we doing on pothole repair? Are we ahead of schedule? Historically, are we behind, or how are we doing?
Well, it's very hard to gauge potholes because, in the sense that in the early months of spring and in the end of the winter, we've been getting, historically now, this is 3 years in a row, some of that real heavy rain, and then it goes into a kind of a deep freeze. That just pops all of our roads. And so what we've been doing is basically every day there's a pothole truck out in those seasons. What we did this year, it got so bad, we had a week or a week and a half where we had 4 trucks out constantly. Now, one of the things that we're able to save some substantial money with is, I think a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, we purchased a machine that actually makes pothole material. And it's basically, we take all the curbs, we warm them up, and we go out. Unfortunately, what we found is it only makes about 1.5 tons of material. We go through 1.5 tons of material by noontime. So now we're actually finding it was a great savings, but we may actually look at trying to get our second machine, or possibly they just came out with this, which is a machine that makes 3 tons, and it makes it a lot quicker. Within 2 hours, you can actually make another 3 tons. So that's what technology is, what's given us an edge on almost everything. But yes, pothole repairs. 3 years ago, we were spending $60,000 just for the pothole material. It was outrageous. Now we're actually making our own product from what we basically what we recoup from the roads.
You have to dispose of.
Exactly, exactly. Even if we're paving a road and we have a little material left, that goes into a clean pile. We then break it up with a machine and we make potholes.
It's just as good?
Just as good.
Are you gonna buy the big yellow?
Well, we got an expert here.
Yeah, there's one that just came out. It's actually out of Canada. I think the technology came out of Canada, but it's a little pricey. We're trying to see if we can work something out with trading in our own machine for a smaller municipality, somebody that would pick it up, somebody that's only got maybe 50, 60 miles of road. We're pushing 240 miles of road, and it's that 3 ton a day we'd probably even be going through that. But so that's where we are with that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So there's no restrictions for you guys to make your own asphalt?
No.
Really?
None at all. No.
How about for
if I
other
could set up a plant in my...
How about for other contractors?
No, the only thing that's become a little bit of a sticking issue is the state's requiring us to now report, because of emission issues, how many tons of asphalt we're laying down and when we're laying it down. There's a trend now that basically says when you put down asphalt, there's emissions that are coming out of the asphalt that could be contributing to the ozone, degradation. So I know this is a lot more information you guys want to know, but you're interested. So there might be a point in time where that will become an issue. We're just getting regulated more and more and more every single day.
Well, I just know the company that started doing it and was shut down by the state.
That's probably because of emission standards.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So you got to be careful getting involved in something.
Our little machine...
Or do they not bother you?
No, our little machine doesn't make anything. It doesn't even...
No, this was a company that was doing like 5 ton a day.
Yeah. It all depends how you're making the material, too.
Yeah.
We're basically recycling, which is basically warming stuff up. We're not...
That's what this was.
Oh, it is? Okay, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, that's
they
interesting.
Broken up
Don't
material.
rat them out, okay?
Yeah, don't...
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I do have another question. No, I just have another quick question. When you said you were paving using, in-house, taking care of your own paving,
Right.
What projects have you done?
We've done 4 roads last year.
Did you?
Yeah, 2 of the Ford. I have a list of... I'll send you the... You can go check them out. You'd be curious to how good they came out.
They came out.
They came out real good. Yeah. Basically this year we're going to try to do about as much, but we have limited amount of money to actually buy asphalt. As you know, asphalt's gone through the roof again, and so that limits our opportunity. Now, our paving box doesn't allow us to go and do White Street. We could do it, but not effectively and efficiently, so we do these smaller roads, but the paving box, after the second road, it basically paid itself off, based on what we were paying a contractor to come in at a contractor's rate to put it down. So
you did a few roads?
Yes, we did 4 roads. Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I just wonder where he's been on Mountainville Avenue. I haven't seen him around.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Iadarola. Does it make sense for us to have a 5-year or a 10-year plan to rotate less fuel-efficient vehicles into more fuel-efficient vehicles? And if it does, is that something that we can work on? And if you're not concerned about it, can you maybe tell us why you're not concerned about it?
No, there's always a concern. When you look at the pricing for fuel, purchasing the most cost-effective and the most economical vehicle is the key. And that's not only on fuel usage, it's maintenance. Now, just because I was involved in this in Stanford, a lot of those environmentally friendly cars, the Hondas, for example, not to knock them, but the savings that we thought were going to generate by those cars never really came forward. And we paid an additional upfront capital investment cost to get those cars, and it never panned out. It just didn't work. So, there would be a large study that would have to be enacted to really look at what other municipalities done, who's actually studied what works and what doesn't work, to kind of look at investing the additional capital to buy those cars. Just simply buying a 4-cylinder car compared to an 8-cylinder, that's a no-brainer. That's going to generate savings right off the bat. And we do that as effectively and as efficiently as we can, depending on what the end use is. If we're having a truck that's going to pull a trailer all the time, a V8 is what's going to work. A 4-cylinder will probably blow the motor with 50, 60,000 miles on it because we're just working it too much. So there's that little bit of a study that has to happen. But yes, whatever we can do. Now, we haven't purchased new vehicles in my department. I can't remember.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. So,
and if I can, he's been looking for good used vehicles.
And we've gotten a lot of good used vehicles for half or maybe even less than half of what. And we found a guy that actually did federal leases, 1-2-year federal leases, and we were able to purchase those cars when they came off federal lease by a special program that he was giving us at an incredible discount. I think these are cars with 6,000, 7,000 miles that we were getting them for about anywhere between $7,000 to $12,000 cheaper than what the current used car market was letting them go for.
Can I have that number, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're all Toyotas. No,
Ms. Steele.
I don't know if this is even the right time or the right place or
It's
even the right
not. Next
department. My question was about the trucks, the pickup trucks.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of questions from constituents asking about the pickup trucks that are driving around in the city. And back in the day, the city employees used to have 2-door, long bed pickup trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Just straightforward pickup trucks. But now they seem to be a little more souped up. They got the lights on the top, they have chrome wheels, 4-door, no tools in the back, one guy driving it, one pulling in the back. Why?
Well, first of all,
I mean, literally, I go from my house to the shop, and I see at least 5 or 6 of them.
But let me just say,
one guy in the truck.
I just want
4-door.
Okay. I just want to tell you that those pickup trucks that I told you that little scenario that I told you that I was purchasing these trucks at a substantial savings, those were. I think that the safety of my men in the middle of a snowstorm, or in the middle of a road, or in the middle of trees being down is well worth the $2,000.
Actually, Antonio, if you...
And we just got hit with OSHA.
Yeah, if you want to talk to that a little bit, because it's affecting not only your department, but the police, the fire.
Well, we just...
Hold on.
These are just questions that people have.
Oh, I know, but this is good that we're having these discussions.
But this is another instance where we've got outside
Now I can answer those questions.
OSHA and these other agencies are saying you've got to change this. Well, they're working fine, but because you got the lights on the cars, we got our vests. We have to change all our vests out.
The requirement for our vests just got changed.
Things. We've got to change out all this stuff.
Yeah.
We just bought some of these things. We just bought a couple years ago.
A year and a half ago.
Yeah. I mean, you just heard about the fire trucks. Same kind of thing. Not too long ago. It's not going to be too much different for all the other trucks that we're going to be buying. So all this is driving costs up. And but I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, these requirements are strictly related to safety. That's really what it comes down to. You are supposed to have so much visible and it has to be visible by so much of a distance with, there's this formula of what you have to have for lights depending on weather conditions, and what we work in is a category of impaired visibility in weather conditions. So there is a general rule which these guys that actually outfit these vehicles know how to, okay, they'll say these lights and this is going to make this compliant if you're doing tree work in the middle of a snowstorm. If you're doing tree work in the middle of fog, it's going to make you compliant if you're in the road. And that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, Antonio, if we could, we've got 2 more categories we need to get through.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything under Public Works?
I used to say it's also an insurance issue, they do that now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they're all bad, it just...
If I could, last two categories we got here is sewer and water,
Okay.
which goes to page 235. David, if you can walk us through that.
Yeah. I'm going to speak again in a high level, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Public Works here. One thing I should note, and this is related to both the sewer and water fund, in the capital, the recommendations by the mayor in the capital section, there's a couple pieces at the tail end of that that has sewer and water. Total for sewer projects and total for water projects on page 266. Those 2 sections should not be added on to this part. Everybody see that? The 5866 and the 9331? Okay, those were parts that were part of the capital improvement plan by the Planning Commission. Okay, if we can strike those off of there. Okay. Total city projects, that's what it should be part of the mayor's recommended city project FY 10-11. Any questions on that?
19 million?
19,133,715. All right. No new projects are being proposed for sewer and water this coming year. They are undergoing existing projects, which they will be completing or continuing, I should say. Okay. In both the sewer and the water funds, we'll deal with the sewer first. You can see that our revenues from budget to budget is going up slightly to make up for the increase in expenditures. In the sewer fund, we have Veolia, who we work with, and they have increases every year with Veolia. And it's based upon an index. The other driver in the sewer fund is the nitrogen removal credits. That's been hitting us for the last several years. And over the last several years, it's been about, over the last 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $5.3 million that we've taken on. And over that time, we haven't had any increases in the rates. And we've been able to absorb much of those credits, and I don't want people to interpret that credits is a good thing. Credits is a bad thing here. They're charges against us. We've had to pay these things, $5.3 million over the last several years. And we've been able to absorb that through the connection charges. But those connection charges have dropped off significantly over the last 18 months to 2 years, and with the decline of the economy. In this coming year, we have about $1.2 million of credits that are going to be hitting us. We can no longer offset those additional revenues with the charges that are hitting us, in addition to the increases that we have to take on every year. The basic increases, the cost of running maintenance and operation. We just can't absorb it any longer without a rate increase. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friends in Public Works here.
Antonio, the floor is yours.
Okay. We performed the nitrogen removal project. It's fully operational. When we pay for nitrogen credits, we pay them in arrears. So the $1.2 million that David just spoke about is actually a payment for last year's nitrogen credits. So we're going to stop the bleeding, we hope, because this new facility is up and running. Unfortunately, there's always going to be a cost related to nitrogen because there's operational cost, there's chemical cost, and then there's a fee to actually manage the removal of nitrogen. So, but it won't be anywhere near $1.2 million. So that's the good news, but unfortunately, this budget it reflects that $1.2 million hit, and that's really the heart of what you're seeing here. The rest, we could, anything you want to talk about specifically, we can.
Percentage of rate increase, do you know what that anticipates? Your rate increase?
David, you have that, right?
Yeah, the rate increase, we're still going to be one of the lowest in the state. The rates, we're going to be, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong on this, the third lowest city, which is, we're still maintaining our same position as the lowest in the third lowest in the city, or in the state, as a city. Is that right?
Well, yeah, from a sewer standpoint, right now we're number 4 as far as... from a sewer standpoint, we're number 4. We'll move to number 7. If we couple that with water, which we'll get into, we are the lowest water in Connecticut. We will remain the lowest water. And most importantly, collectively, water and sewer, we're still going to be the lowest in the state for water and sewer users.
Yeah, I think it's an important note to mention that the other, when David spoke about the 4th position, the other...
Yeah, I'm looking at comparable sites.
We're looking at comparable cities now. These other ones are like
510 population.
That's a private water
510. There's a population of 3,900, and there's a population of 6,400.
Yeah, no.
I don't view those as comparable.
And there's other associated taxes that those communities have, which offset their water costs.
Our annual rate will be $189. That's for a user that is 18,000 gallons, Dave?
Yeah, 18,000 gallons.
18,000 gallons, which is a pretty heavy user.
It covers all your single, 2-family, even possibly 3-family homes.
Right. A low user is going to see a substantially smaller, gentle increase.
What was the previous rate?
The previous rate is...
we have it in here. I have the book here.
About 160, 159.
159?
Yes.
Jack, if I may speak, before the increase, the average sewer rate in Danbury for the average customer using 18,000 gallons a year is $159. That'll jump up to about $188. Okay, and for water, when we talk about that, the average use is $146. Again, for the average residential user, 18,000 gallons a quarter, and that's going to move to $153. So collectively, for water and sewer, it's about a $9 increase per quarter, $36 per year.
It's about $36 per year on the average.
8 cents a day is what it comes out to be. Or on a light user, which is probably the majority of the users with, a couple, or a senior is probably 5 cents a day.
Okay. Questions?
5 cents a day.
No.
Mr. Rotella.
Thanks. Briefly, are we going to be in compliance, Antonio, with nitrogen when this system is working, say, next year?
Well, compliance, you're never in compliance, but what we will be, our nitrogen removal is based on a design flow. If we exceed that design flow, which like in March we did, this March we had tremendous rain, you have inflow, you have infiltration that gets into our system, the numbers go through the roof, and we discharge a higher nitrogen number than we would like to.
So we have to buy credits.
We have to buy credits to cover that.
Even with the new system,
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah, because there's no way you could, the cost to design a system that would take care of those peak flows, 15 million gallons per day, would be outrageous. We would economically never recoup the cost from it.
You can't use the big storage bin out there to hold the
We
water?
do, yeah.
All right, and then the other question briefly, when does our contract with, what is it, Evolio?
Veolia.
When does that run out?
We have another 2017, maybe another 7 years.
7 years.
7 years. Yeah, so it was a 20-year contract when we entered in 1997.
Can we do it cheaper than they can?
We'll have to review that. I mean, that'll be in the next, once there's 5 years left, we're going to take a good hard look at the cost to do that.
Okay.
Okay, and as far as water goes?
As far as water goes, okay, you can see budget to budget, year over year. Again, there's not a whole lot of increase going on there. Just your operation and maintenance costs are going up. And that's why we're proposing that for your 18,000, I'm using the 18,000 gallons per year because that is what the study that everybody is familiar with uses, and that's your average family, 4-person family household uses. And that's a 2-cent a day increase. For your couple, it would be a 1 cent a day increase, and that's 5,000 gallons. And the rate for that would be at still be the lowest in the state. It would be at 154.
Okay. All right. Any other questions pertaining to this? Mr. Rotella.
Just to be on the record, this increase, these funds stay inside the department, correct?
The enterprise fund.
Right.
Yeah, that's
It doesn't go to the general fund.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're paying for water decision.
Strictly related to water.
Upgrades and all that stuff is
Yes.
going to be used strictly inside that system.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, there's no fancy upgrades to this. This is operation and maintenance, and it's...
Well, pipes break and you got to put a new one in there.
Well, right. I mean, this is not for some major new project going on.
I don't mean that.
Okay, all right.
It stays inside the system.
Okay. Mr. Seabury.
Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, I would like to make a motion to recommend the council before to adopt the budget as the government, the mayor, as public commission.
Motion is made by Mr. Seabury, seconded by Mr. Viscon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed. Motion to adjourn.
You got it.